Welcome to People Tech, the podcast of WorkforceAI.news. I'm Mark Pfeffer. I know, I haven't written, I haven't called, but that's what happens when you go on vacation. Transatlantic on the Queen Mary 2, by the way, highly recommended. Anyway, I'm back, and today I'm talking with Brandon Roberts, Group Vice President of People Analytics and AI at ServiceNow. There's a lot of talk about how AI will improve efficiency and boost productivity. Executives love those things, but what do employees think? And how should a company approach the transformation? And managers, you're not only going to manage people anymore, you'll be managing AI agents too. And that's what we'll get into on this edition of People Tech. Brandon, hi, welcome. Let me start by, ServiceNow I know has done a lot of work looking at users, meaning the end users, in this case, employees. And I'm wondering, with all the talk that's going on about AI, what are employees feeling? Are they nervous? Are they excited or what?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a mix of both. I mean, I think with any technological change, and we really believe this is transformative, that work is really going to change for just about every role in our company. There's always a little bit of that fear. And I think we see that in employees. And I think we consider it our role to really make them feel comfortable and make them understand kind of how this is going to impact their roles so that they can, instead of having that fear, be willing to, lean in and actually start adopting the tools and technology that we're building. Like our CHRO, Jackie, has described this kind of AI transformation as a human renaissance. And that's the way we want employees to feel, that this is an opportunity to remove those mundane tasks from your day-to-day role and allow you to focus on more creative and more meaningful work. But to do that, it requires really leaning in to learn new skills, and that could be scary, but our job as a company is to help them get there and help them get comfortable with that mindset.
So how do you reassure employees that all of this increased efficiency and productivity is not going to result in some kind of headcount reduction?
Yeah. So I think you have to make a commitment as a company that this is a priority, that people are at the center of your AI strategy, and that you're going to provide the resources to reskill and upskill in a way that will actually allow them to transform with the organization instead of, this is a cost-cutting exercise. And I think we've made that statement really clearly to our employees, that our expectation is that you're using AI, but our promise back is that we're going to, try to transform your roles versus, do some sort of cost-cutting exercise. And we really think that's where the value is, right? Cost cutting is one option, but the other is to repurpose that capacity to something more valuable that's important to the organization. So we can talk about use cases or examples of how we've done that internally, if that's useful. But
yeah, no, actually it is, because the reason I'm sort of getting at this is there's a lot of talk about this, efficiency and productivity being the key words. And then people say there won't be a lot of job reductions. It'll be transformative. How does that work, though? How do you take all of these employees, make them more efficient, and get away with keeping them?
Yeah, I think it's a reskilling exercise. So that does happen if people do not commit to reskilling and upskilling in a way that's meaningful, right? Basically, what's happening is work is changing. It's not that work's going away. And I think that's like a really important, differentiation. What you're spending time on today, right? Those simple tasks that AI can do better than us as humans is going away, and we're going to need people to spend time on more meaningful work. So let me give you like an example, which I think might make this more real for people. So we went through this big transformation in our people operations organization, and we implemented technology, AI agents that help solve employees' requests. So an employee, I need to change my benefits, I need to change my manager, whatever it is, they're submitting something for a support request. We implemented AI agents, and that increased the productivity of our people by 2x. So they could support one agent, one person could support 880 employees at the end of this When we started, one agent was supporting 400 employees. So we needed less employees doing that work. That doesn't mean that there's not work in HR for these employees to do. And so what we did was implement a program that says, okay, no longer do we need you to execute these tasks. AI can do those tasks really effectively. But guess what? We really need more strategic partnership with our leaders across the company. And we upskilled the employees who were doing that work to actually fill these roles that we did need. And I think that's what when we talk about this concept of a human renaissance, to me, that's what you want to do. You implement technology, you increase productivity, and then you say, how am I going to take that capacity that I've created and reallocate it to something that's going to deliver a new revenue stream, better margins, whatever that is for your business. And I think companies have to commit to that, because I think you're right that there is a risk of going to cost cutting, and we don't think that's the right way to go.
I think what you're saying is that the executives have to be thinking long term
Yeah.
as to how they plan their workforce.
And people need to be at the center of the strategy, right? Like I think there's a huge technology component to this, right? And if you just focus on that, you're not going to get all the value out of it. So how do you keep people at the center of this and say, we're going to bring you along in this transformation? And then I think that creates incentives for your employees to lean into this transformation and actually try to use the AI tools that you're trying to launch and build, right? Because they feel confident that this is going to, help everybody.
I just happened to see a report this morning that showed that more than half of business leaders, about 55%, regret layoffs they've made because of what's making them have second thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One is what we just talked about. So, that concept of not bringing employees along, that has negative repercussions to talent that stays at your organization, that has implications for your culture. So I think there's a lot of, downstream implications of making those decisions. The other thing that I think I've read the same article that you just mentioned. The other thing that I think is part of it is people hear productivity and they immediately jump to this cost cutting exercise, right? I think people got ahead of where the productivity was. And so one of the things that we really are keying in on is how do we actually measure the real capacity gains, not estimated, or how much capacity are we actually created from this technology so that we can reallocate the right amount of capacity to new endeavors. I think a lot of people heard, oh, I'm going to 2x productivity and did layoffs ahead of that. And that's, not going to deliver the value. And I think they're struggling with that now, seeing the downside.
What are customers saying when you talk to them? I mean, it's got to be on their minds. And what are you hearing?
Yeah, I think they're saying the same. I think exactly what we just talked about. There's some companies that are, sort of leaning towards this cost cutting and starting to realize that maybe that's not the right way to go. And I think a lot of organizations are realizing that we have this opportunity to make this a very positive transformation for everybody, for employees, for them to increase productivity, to build new skills in our organization. They're looking for answers for how you do that, right? How do you reskill and upskill effectively? And I'm spending a lot of time talking to customers about that enablement concept and how do you build understanding of the AI tools so that you're freeing up this capacity, and then how do you ultimately take that capacity to do something more meaningful?
When they ask you that, what do you tell them?
Yeah. So a couple things. Our internal enablement strategy kind of focuses on 3 core pillars. So first, we want to build an understanding of AI across our organization that's foundational. Every single employee in our company needs to understand the basics of AI. When is it the right time to use it? What does responsible AI look like? Those kind of concepts. So we've built an entire training. And I'll talk a little bit about the how after I talk about kind of what we're trying to train or enable people on. So first piece is just what we call no AI. Second piece is use AI. So a lot of employees, I just talked about the HR agents or HR support, are getting tools built into their workflows, their day-to-day work that they need to learn. So every time we launch this new feature or new functionality on the platform, we have to train people to use it. We did this launch really early on in 2023. We launched this functionality called case summarization. So the way it works is Let's say an employee says, "Oh, I need to change my visa," and working back and forth with an agent to solve an issue that they have.
Mhm.
That agent then leaves, right? They leave the organization, they go on vacation, whatever it is. The case gets transferred to a new agent. What used to happen is you basically have to start all over, right? And talk to the employee or read through all the emails, get all the information. AI is great at summarizing what's happened and where you're at and getting that agent up to speed faster. And we were so excited about it because it was increasing productivity. The agents were getting up to speed 37% faster. But when we launched it, we didn't explain what went into the model. We didn't explain how it worked. We didn't explain how they were supposed to use it. And no one ended up using the tool because they weren't confident in how it worked. And so we build a lot of enablement around what we call this use AI. If we're going to launch a feature, we're going to tell you exactly how the model works, what goes into it, how you should be using it. And we think that's really key to driving adoption and actually getting a lot of the value out of the technology. Then, so no AI, use AI, and then the third piece is build AI. And so we believe that there's technical skills that we need to develop. We're a technology company, so we have a particular emphasis on AI related skills and building those technical skills. But there's also this need to build AI capabilities in every employee, in every role across your organization. We think, especially in the future, it's not going to be a few engineers building AI solutions, but that every employee is going to be, developing solutions that help them get work done through AI. So kind of like a citizen development kind of concept. So those are the three things we're trying to teach our employees. The how of what we're doing is ServiceNow University. So we just recently announced this is a new way of thinking about learning. It's allowing employees, it's personalized to them. So it's basically taking what we know about employees internally and creating training and learning development plans that really help them build those skills that I just talked about, whatever's relevant to their role. Kind of a side note on that, but it's actually open to anyone. So anybody can go into ServiceNow University and start to build AI skills around those things that I just talked through. But that's been sort of our answer to building the skills, and that's what we want to build. And then ServiceNow University is our how.
So it seems like another responsibility of managers would be not just managing these newly skilled employees, but if AI is so far along in, let's call it advanced thinking, don't they sort of need to be managed also? I'm thinking if you tell, you tell a system, write me a report on this or summarize these reports, someone still has to go through and review that and make sure it's.
Mhm.
So could you talk about that a little bit? I mean, the idea of a line manager or a middle manager suddenly managing the machine as well as managing the employees.
Yeah, and I think this is going to become extremely common, right? Where you have agents or workflows that are built that are using AI that the average employee needs to think through, right? They need to onboard these. You build a new agent. What data do they need? What data do they need access to? What sort of security do they need? All those sort of management concepts, which we do for employees today, we're going to have to do for agents, right? You're going to have to deliver performance reviews, right? Is the agent working or not working? Why is it not working? What can we do to make it better and better? And so I think there is going to be, it's going to be very common. And I think it's honestly already happening where agents are part of people's day-to-day work and their responsibility as actually not even as a manager today. I think what we considered individual contributors today will also be managing agents. I think it will be very rare in the near future for any role not to be managing agents, to be honest.
I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm wondering, i- you're talking about performance reviews and
Mhm.
such with AI. Is HR going to get pulled into that somehow?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of interesting perspectives on HR and IT and what this means and the sort of merging of those roles and responsibilities. Because who's really responsible for that? Is it your IT function or is it your HR function? I think there's going to be a lot of things we need to work through um, to figure out who's ultimately responsible for it. But fundamentally, HR should have a role in measuring and assessing performance. And like our CHRO, just to kind of give you a talking point on how big we think this transformation is from an HR perspective. She just recently changed her title from Chief People Officer to Chief People and AI Enablement Officer. We believe HR's core function is in AI. I mean, from training, from building those skills, everything we just talked about, but also in managing the agents. Agents are a new part of our workforce, and we need to figure out what that means.
So what's your biggest concern about all this?
My biggest concern about all this, well, I think my biggest concern is keeping people at the center, like we talked about. I think it's very easy to jump to cost cutting and to think that this is what this exercise is for. And we believe it's much bigger than that. So how do we keep people at the center? How do we continue to ask ourselves, not can the technology do this, but is this the right thing to do? And how are we going to help the people come along in this transformation? And I think there's a lot of dimensions to that, right? It's a lot of the things we've just talked about. But to me, keeping people at the center and remembering that the point of AI is not to cut costs. It's to make the world better. It's to make organizations better.
Brandon, thanks so much. It's great to talk with you. I hope you'll come visit again, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
My guest today has been Brandon Roberts, Group Vice President of People Analytics and AI at ServiceNow. And this has been People Tech, the dry land podcast of WorkforceAI.news. We're a part of the Work Defined Podcast Network. Find them at www.wrkdefined.com. And to keep up with AI technology and HR, subscribe to Workforce AI today. We're the most trusted source of news in the HR tech industry. Find us at www.workforceai.news. I'm Mark Pfeffer.